Before we dive into this emotional journey, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your thoughts really matter to us. If you're a fan of dark romance, Afro-Korean love, mafia intrigue, or gripping love stories that cross cultures, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story like this. And hey, if you know someone who could use a little extra inspiration today, don't forget to share this with them. The house was too big, too quiet. It swallowed sound whole, leaving only the weight of Jin-Ho's thoughts to fill the emptiness. His footsteps echoed through the massive corridors, each step a reminder of how far he had fallen. His mansion in Carmel, Indiana, once a symbol of triumph, now felt like a gilded cage. The marble floors gleamed under his feet, reflecting the life he had once built, a life he'd taken for granted. But it was all hollow now. The grand staircase loomed in front of him, a bridge between the past and the present. He didn't climb it. He didn't need to. He was already at the top, but he had nothing left to conquer. No one to share it with. His empire, once built on the backs of countless others, now lay in ruins, his world reduced to this vast, empty house. Jin-Ho stopped in the middle of the living room, staring at the paintings hanging on the walls. Expensive, yes. Beautiful, even. But they were just decoration now, meaningless. He moved toward the fireplace, his fingers brushing against the cold stone mantel. The fire was long gone, just like the warmth he used to feel when his family had been here. The sound of laughter, warm and full, echoes through the memory. A small, rustic boat drifts lazily on Lake Monroe, the sun casting golden ripples over the water. Shay laughs as Donald splashes water at Jin-Ho, the three of them carefree. The boat rocks gently as Jin-Ho scoops up Donald and spins him around, his son's bright laughter filling the air. Jin-Ho's hand clenched at his side. The room felt colder now, even with the warmth of the memories he had just conjured. It was hard to face them, hard to face the reality that they were gone. He turned from the fireplace and walked past a set of framed photographs on the wall. Family photos. His hand brushed the edge of one frame, just a brush of the fingertips. It was a photo from Lake Monroe, him, Shay, and Donald grinning, caught in a perfect moment of family bliss. It was real then, wasn't it? The love, the connection. His hand hovered over the photo but didn't touch it. Instead, he pulled back, the weight of what he had lost settling in his chest like a stone. The family is gathered in the kitchen. Shay moves around the kitchen with ease, setting the table as Donald rushes to hand her the plates. Jin-Ho stirs something at the stove, occasionally glancing at his wife and son, a proud smile tugging at the corners of his lips. The room is full of life, full of love. The house had been full then, full of everything Jin-Ho had ever wanted, a wife who stood by him through it all, a son who looked up to him, a life that promised more than just power and wealth. He had held it all in his hands, but now it was slipping through his fingers, like sand. He walked farther into the hallway, the sound of his footsteps louder now, as if the house was amplifying his growing isolation. His eyes moved from one photo to the next, his family, smiling, happy. Shay and Donald in the background, always supporting him, always there. But now they were gone. Gone. The silence around him seemed to press in, suffocating. He could hear his own breath, shallow and uneven, as he made his way to the large windows that overlooked the yard. The world outside was dark, a thick blanket of night shrouding everything, but the emptiness inside him was darker still. Jin-Ho stood at the window, staring out. The reflection of his face in the glass seemed foreign to him, a man he barely recognized. His jaw was tight, his eyes hollow with regret. He exhaled slowly, the weight of everything crashing down on him all at once. The life he had chosen, the life of power and conquest, had led him to this. He had built an empire, yes, but he had built it alone. And now, all that remained was a cold, silent house, no one left to share it with. He had let the love he took for granted slip away. Shay, who had always been there for him, who had believed in him when no one else did. Donald, his son, who had looked up to him with such innocence and hope. What was it all for if it wasn't for them? The quiet hum of the evening. Shay sits on the couch, a book in her lap. Donald is sprawled on the floor, playing with his toys. Jin-Ho enters, takes a moment to glance at his family, his heart full. He didn't know it then, but he would soon lose it all. Jin-Ho's chest tightened. The weight of his regrets was suffocating. He had once promised Shay and Donald a life away from his dark world, a life built on love and stability, but he had failed them. He had chosen Harmony, his first love, over the family that truly mattered. He had let her pull him back into a life of greed and selfishness. Shay, Donald. The names echoed in his mind, sharp and unyielding. His heart clenched as he realized the truth: he had lost them, not because they had left him, but because he had pushed them away. And now, he was alone. He had everything but nothing. He took a final glance at the empty house around him. The wealth, the power, the empire, it meant nothing now. All he wanted was the life he had once had, the life he had destroyed. Jin-Ho turned away from the window, his shoulders heavy with grief. His gaze lingered on the empty halls, the cold rooms, the space where love had once lived. It was gone now. All of it. Gone. The office was a sanctuary of stillness, tucked away from the noise of the world. Jin-Ho sat at his massive desk, the weight of the silence pressing down on him. He absent-mindedly flipped through an old photo album, each picture a frozen moment in time, a memory of a life long gone. His fingers lingered on the photo of Harmony, the woman who had once held his heart with the same intensity he now poured into his empire. A younger Jin-Ho and Harmony stand on a quiet street in Seoul, the city lights flickering behind them. The air is thick with unspoken promises, the kind that only young love knows. Harmony smiles at him, a spark in her eyes that matched his own. Their hands brushed briefly before intertwining, and for a moment, the chaos of their criminal lives seemed distant, irrelevant. They shared stolen moments, late-night walks, secret meetings in dimly lit cafes, and a passion that neither could ignore. But their love was always bound by the harsh realities of their world. As time passed, the weight of their respective obligations pulled them apart. Harmony, more dedicated to the family business than Jin-Ho could ever understand, left. Their love, like their dreams, dissolved amidst the violence of their lives. The present was much quieter. Jin-Ho stared at the photo of Harmony, his heart heavy with longing. The years had done nothing to lessen the pull she still had over him. He couldn't deny it, he missed her, even now. His thoughts wandered, drifting back to that time when he was someone different, someone freer. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, breaking his reverie. It was a name he hadn't seen in years: Harmony. He hesitated for only a moment before answering, his pulse quickening. Hello? Jin-Ho. It's been a while. Her voice, calm and smooth, sent a chill through him. It was the same voice he remembered, the one that had always drawn him in like a magnet. I've been thinking about you. Maybe we should reconnect. After all these years. Jin-Ho's breath caught. The familiar tug of desire, of nostalgia, gripped him, but as the conversation unfolded, the danger of falling back into old habits loomed large. He could already feel his obsession rekindling, the past creeping back into his life, pulling him away from Shay and Donald. He hadn't realized how much he missed Harmony and how quickly that longing could unravel everything. The modest home on the outskirts of Indianapolis felt like a world away from the mansion Jin-Ho had left behind. The walls were warm, lived in, but far from the opulence they'd once known. Shay sat at the kitchen table with Donald, both of them surrounded by bills and paperwork. The silence between them was heavy, the weight of their new reality settling in. Shay glanced at her son, her heart aching as she watched him push the papers aside, a cloud of frustration hanging over him. Donald didn't meet her eyes he hadn't for weeks. His mood was darker, more withdrawn with each passing day. We'll get through this, baby. It's just a little tough right now. It's not just money, Mom. It's him. He doesn't care anymore. Shay's throat tightened. She knew. She'd seen it in Jin-Ho's eyes before he'd disappeared. Donald felt it deeply, his father's absence, his emotional neglect. His rejection of Jin-Ho was a defense, a way to cope with the pain. There was no denying it now. The distance between them physically, emotionally was growing, and Shay, despite her best efforts, couldn't fill the gap. The dim lighting of the upscale bar in Indianapolis cast soft shadows across the wooden tables, giving the place an intimate, almost secretive air. Jin-Ho entered, his movements deliberate but quiet. The atmosphere was a far cry from the cold, silent halls of his mansion. The low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses filled the space, but none of it reached him. His focus was on the woman waiting at a corner table. Harmony. She sat, her figure outlined by the flickering candlelight, a glass of wine in her hand. Her presence alone seemed to pull him into another world, one he hadn't realized he'd been longing for until that moment. She hadn't changed, still the same woman who had once filled his life with fire and passion. The years apart hadn't dulled the sharpness in her gaze, nor the way her lips curved when she smiled. The same smile that had once made him forget everything else. Jin-Ho walked towards her, his heart picking up speed with every step. When she looked up, their eyes met and held, and for a brief second, the world around them ceased to exist. Jin-Ho, you look exactly the same. Time hasn't done a thing to you. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, taking in the sight of her. It felt like a lifetime ago when they'd last been in each other's presence before their lives had pulled them apart, before they'd both been consumed by the chaos of the world they inhabited, the criminal world that had always threatened to tear them apart. He sat down across from her, his voice almost hushed as he spoke. You haven't changed either. Still, I could say the same for you. There was an ease to the conversation, a familiarity that was comforting and dangerous all at once. They fell into a rhythm, as though the years between them hadn't mattered. They reminisced about their youth, about late-night walks, stolen kisses, the feeling of being invincible together. Harmony spoke of the years she'd spent building her life, her career in the underworld, while Jin-Ho shared the struggles of trying to balance his own empire with his family life. But underneath the surface, there was an undeniable tension, an electric charge that neither could ignore. It didn't take long before they both remembered why they had loved each other so intensely in the first place. They were younger, standing in a secluded alley behind a nightclub in Seoul. Jin-Ho's hand is pressed against the brick wall beside Harmony's face. The moment is charged with heat and longing, their breaths shallow as they kiss, their bodies pressed close. The memory lingered in Jin-Ho's mind as he sat across from her now. The pull he had always felt toward her was stronger than ever. Harmony's voice, calm and sultry, broke through his reverie. It's funny, Jin-Ho, how after all these years, it feels like we never left each other, like nothing really changed. The words hung in the air, thick with unspoken promises. Jin-Ho's gaze softened. There was no denying it, he was pulled back into the past, into the intoxicating pull of Harmony. It felt like slipping into something familiar and dangerous, and he couldn't bring himself to resist. As the night wore on, they continued to talk, laugh, and share stories of the years that had passed. Jin-Ho found himself lost in the conversation, lost in the way she made him feel, alive, desirable, reconnected to a version of himself he hadn't realized he had buried beneath the weight of his responsibilities. The clock ticked on unnoticed. What had started as a friendly reunion began to shift, morphing into something more. There was an undeniable chemistry, an old flame rekindling with every glance and every touch. Jin-Ho's mind briefly flashed to Shay and Donald, but the thoughts were fleeting, easily pushed aside by the intensity of the moment. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt this way. As they stood to leave, Harmony's hand brushed against his arm, sending a jolt of electricity through him. Her voice was a whisper, a promise. I've missed you, Jin-Ho. We should do this again. Jin-Ho's heart raced. The temptation was overwhelming. I don't think I can stay away. The words slipped from his lips before he could stop them, and Harmony's smile deepened, knowing that she had him exactly where she wanted him. In the days that followed, Jin-Ho couldn't get Harmony out of his mind. He started sneaking away more often, slipping out to meet her under the guise of business, justifying it as temporary, as necessary. But it wasn't. His thoughts were consumed by her. He found himself avoiding Shay's questions about his whereabouts, the lies coming easier each time. At home, Shay grew increasingly concerned about Donald. His behavior was worsening, his rejection of his father growing more pronounced with each passing day. But Jin-Ho was too consumed in the past, too lost in the rush of rediscovered passion to see the damage it was causing. The distance between him and his family grew, and the cracks began to show, both in his marriage and in his relationship with his son. Jin-Ho, where have you been? You're slipping away from us. But Jin-Ho's attention was elsewhere, drawn once again into the allure of Harmony, and away from the family he had once promised everything. The small house in Indianapolis was quiet, almost too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a car passing outside were the only interruptions in the thick silence that filled the air. Shay sat at the kitchen table, her hands gripping a cup of coffee, though it had long since gone cold. Donald was upstairs in his room, the door shut tight, another sign of the growing distance between them. Jin-Ho walked in through the door, his jacket thrown over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. He barely acknowledged Shay as he hung it on the coat rack. His mind was elsewhere, as it had been for weeks now. He had been slipping away, piece by piece, his thoughts consumed by the rekindled flame with Harmony. The house, his family, none of it seemed to matter as much as the pull she had on him. Shay watched him for a moment, the anger building up inside her like a tidal wave. The frustration had been mounting for weeks, his constant absences, the way he had started to pull away emotionally. She couldn't keep pretending it didn't hurt. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Jin-Ho didn't even flinch. He was too far gone. You don't see it, do you? You're choosing a ghost from your past over the family in front of you. I'm here, Jin-Ho. We're here. But you're too caught up in her to even notice. Jin-Ho's eyes briefly flicked to her, but he didn't respond immediately. He had heard it all before, hadn't he? Shay's frustration, her hurt, it had all been building for so long. But he didn't understand why it felt so suffocating now. The pull of Harmony was just too strong to ignore. His past, the woman he had once loved, had a way of drawing him back in, and it was a temptation he couldn't resist. You don't understand, Shay. Harmony is part of who I am. She's the woman I could have had everything with. Don't you see? She's the one who was always meant to be in my life. She's my chance at what I wanted before all this, the power, the empire. His words stung, but Shay refused to back down. She had spent years supporting him, believing in him. She had sacrificed her own dreams, her own life, to make their family work. And now, this betrayal was something she couldn't ignore. And what about us, Jin-Ho? What about Donald? You're slipping away from us. And you don't even care. You keep telling me it's temporary, that it'll pass, but every day it gets worse. He gets worse. You're abandoning us for a woman who left you once, and who will do it again, and you won't even see it. The words hit harder than Jin-Ho expected. He opened his mouth to respond, but something in him faltered. Shay was right, in a way. He had been pulling away from her, from their son, and it was becoming undeniable. But even now, with the truth staring him in the face, he couldn't bring himself to let go of the grip Harmony had on him. Jin-Ho's voice was flat, emotionless, as if he were talking to a stranger, not the woman who had stood by him for years. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just trying to live for once. To feel something real. You want to feel something real? You've got it right in front of you, Jin-Ho. But you're too busy chasing a ghost to see it. I gave you everything. We gave you everything. But you've pushed us aside for her, and now we're paying the price. Jin-Ho didn't respond. He couldn't. His thoughts were clouded, his heart torn between the memories of Harmony and the reality of what he was doing to his family. But the silence between them was deafening. Every word that had been left unspoken, every tear he had never shed hung heavy in the air. Upstairs, Donald's door creaked open, but he didn't come down. Instead, he peeked out, his eyes darkened by the frustration and confusion he had been feeling for so long. He had heard the argument, heard the words his father and mother exchanged. His face, once full of hope and admiration for his father, was now clouded with hurt. Donald had tried to be strong, but the emotional weight of it all had worn him down. The fracture in their family was undeniable. The tension between Jin-Ho and Shay was only the surface of something much deeper. Donald had already begun to pull away from his father, refusing to acknowledge the man who was no longer the father he had once idolized. Shay stood in the middle of the room, her chest rising and falling with each breath, her eyes filled with years of pent-up emotion. She had tried so hard to hold this family together, but it was becoming clear that no matter what she did, she couldn't save Jin-Ho from himself. The separation, both emotional and inevitable, was already in motion. The distance between them was growing, and neither of them could stop it, not anymore. The mansion in Carmel stood silent, its grand structure imposing but hollow. The door to the entryway swung open as Jin-Ho stepped inside. A chill ran through him as his eyes scanned the vast, empty hallway. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the vacant rooms, filling the air with an unbearable stillness. It had been days since Shay and Donald had left, but the absence of their presence still lingered like a suffocating fog. The house was unrecognizable now. What had once been a sanctuary of wealth and success now felt like a prison. The walls, adorned with photographs of happier times, seemed to mock him. Shay's laughter, Donald's excitement, All the little things he had taken for granted were gone, lost to his own neglect. Family dinner around the kitchen table. Jin-Ho, Shay, and Donald laughing together. Shay passes the mashed potatoes, Donald stealing a spoonful, and Jin-Ho chuckling as he gives his son a mock glare. The warmth in the room is palpable, their faces glowing with contentment. Birthday celebrations, with Donald blowing out the candles on his cake. The room filled with joy and love. Shay watches, smiling with pride, while Jin-Ho claps his hands, beaming with the satisfaction of a man who feels he has everything. Jin-Ho's eyes moved over the empty space. The laughter, the joy, the energy that had once filled these rooms were now gone. In its place was a cold, sterile silence. The house had become a mausoleum of lost memories, its grandiosity meaningless in the face of what he had lost. He moved further into the house, his steps slow and heavy, as if the weight of his failure had physically sunk into his bones. He reached the living room, where a photograph of Shay and Donald sat on the mantel. It was a snapshot from their last family vacation. A candid moment, Donald mid-laugh, Shay playfully nudging him, and Jin-Ho looking on with a proud, contented smile. The sight of it caused a sharp pang in his chest. He wanted to reach out and touch the frame, to turn back time, to fix what he had broken. But his hand hovered over it, trembling slightly, before pulling back. The emptiness in the room swallowed him whole. What have I done? His phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him out of his thoughts. He pulled it out, quickly dialing Shay's number, desperate for some sign that she was still willing to listen. The call went to voicemail immediately. He tried again, and again, each time met with the same cold silence. His heart raced. Shay was gone. She had shut him out. But he couldn't accept it, not yet. He called Donald's number, hoping for the same response, but the line went dead, the silence on the other end of the phone more deafening than any words could have been. They're really gone. The cold, stark silence of the house pressed in on him. Shay and Donald were no longer just out of reach, they were gone, and he knew deep down that there was nothing he could do to fix it. His obsession with harmony, his addiction to the thrill of their affair, had cost him everything that truly mattered. Jin-Ho dropped his phone onto the marble countertop, his fingers trembling. His breath was shallow, his chest tight. He sank into a nearby armchair, running his hands over his face. The weight of the years he had wasted, of the neglect he had inflicted on his family, pressed down on him like a crushing burden. He could feel it now, the finality of it all. Shay had been right. He had chosen harmony, his past, over the future he could have had with her, with Donald, and now it was too late. His empire, his criminal life, his past, it had all been for nothing if he couldn't have the family he had promised to protect. I've lost them. I've lost everything. The loneliness was suffocating. He had built an empire of power, of influence, but it meant nothing without the people who had once given his life meaning. His world had been consumed by ambition, by obsession, and now that world was crumbling around him. The realization hit him like a cold, unforgiving wave. There was no going back. The house was empty. The life he had known, the family he had once held dear, was gone, and now Jin-Ho was left to face the consequences of his own actions. The drive to Gary, Indiana felt endless. Jin-Ho's hands gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white against the leather. The town passed by in a blur of industrial buildings, forgotten streets, and fading signs. It was a far cry from the pristine streets of Carmel, where he had once roamed with the arrogance of someone who thought he had it all. Now, he felt like a man who had nothing but the broken pieces of his choices and the heavy weight of his regret. As he neared the address he had memorized, a sense of urgency took hold of him. Shay's mother had always been a steady presence in their lives, though they'd never been particularly close. But now, she was his last hope. He needed to know where Shay had gone, needed to fix the rift he had created before it was too late. The small house on the edge of Gary seemed out of place in the faded neighborhood. It wasn't much, certainly not the lavish home he was used to, but there was something about it that felt real. Shay's mother, a woman who had weathered her own storms, had always valued simplicity over grandeur. Jin-Ho knocked on the door, his heart racing. The door opened slowly, revealing Shay's mother, her face lined with age but still strong. Her eyes flicked over him, a quiet suspicion lingering in them. "You've got some nerve, Jin-Ho. After everything you've done." Jin-Ho opened his mouth to speak, but his words caught in his throat. He had no defense, no excuse. His actions spoke louder than anything he could say. He lowered his gaze, letting the silence hang in the air. I need to find her. Shay and Donald, please. I've messed up, I know that. But I need to make it right. I've lost them. And I can't live with myself knowing I've lost them for good. For a long moment, Shay's mother didn't respond. Her gaze softened, just slightly, and Jin-Ho saw the flicker of something, perhaps pity, or maybe a shred of hope. She stepped back, motioning for him to enter. You've changed. I can see that. But that doesn't mean it's all going to magically fall back into place. You've broken her trust, and you've broken your son's heart. That's not something you fix overnight. Jin-Ho nodded, his throat tightening. He knew she was right, but something inside him had snapped, something that had been buried deep for far too long. He wasn't just seeking redemption for Shay and Donald anymore. He was searching for his own soul. I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but please just tell me where they are. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't care if it takes years. I'll work for it. I'll prove that I can be the man they need. Shay's mother sighed, her eyes softening as she studied him. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken words. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. They've moved. They're living on the outskirts of Indianapolis, in a modest neighborhood. Shay's trying to start over, trying to give Donald some stability. She doesn't want anything to do with you. But that's where they are. Jin-Ho felt a weight lift from his chest, but it was immediately replaced with the crushing knowledge of what lay ahead. Shay had chosen to leave, and no matter how hard he tried, there was no guarantee she would ever welcome him back. Thank you. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment, searching his face for something more than just words. She seemed to find it, just barely. She nodded once, sharply. Don't waste your second chance, Jin-Ho. If you truly want to fix things, you'll have to fight for it, and that fight won't be easy. Jin-Ho's eyes held hers for a long time, the weight of her words sinking deep. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be no shortcuts, no quick fixes. But he had come this far, he wasn't about to give up now. As he turned to leave, the world outside felt different. The streets of Gary, the quiet homes, everything seemed a little less distant. Maybe it was the first step toward redemption. Maybe it was the only chance he had left. He had a long way to go, but Shay and Donald, his family, were still out there. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something other than regret, a faint but growing spark of hope. The sound of footsteps on the cobblestones of Fountain Square echoed in the early afternoon silence. Jin-Ho stood near the fountain, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his breath shallow with nerves he hadn't felt in years. The square, with its mix of old brick buildings and the hum of city life, felt oddly unfamiliar to him. This wasn't the Indianapolis he knew, this wasn't the city of his empire. This was a place where he had once been part of something real, something grounded, and yet he felt like an outsider now. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the park. It was a beautiful day, but Jin-Ho barely noticed. He wasn't here for the scenery. He wasn't here for anything other than a chance, one last chance to make things right, to find a way back to Shay and Donald. He had come a long way since that day he had walked into an empty house, the weight of his mistakes pressing down on him with every breath. And now, here he was, waiting for the woman he had hurt, the woman he had failed, to face him once again. Shay arrived just as he had begun to wonder if she would show. She walked toward him slowly, her face unreadable, her expression guarded. The distance between them felt like miles, though they were only a few feet apart. She stopped in front of him, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with tension, a mix of pain and unspoken words. I've spent my whole life trying to build something out of nothing, but I didn't see what was in front of me. You, Donald, that's what mattered. I'm sorry I lost sight of that. You didn't just lose sight of us, Jin-Ho. You lost us completely, and now I'm not sure how to find a way back. Jin-Ho winced at her words, but he didn't look away. He had to hear it, even if it hurt. He deserved it, every word, every ounce of pain that Shay had carried on her shoulders for so long. They sat down at a nearby bench, the silence between them stretching out like a chasm. The gentle murmur of people walking through the square, the distant laughter of children playing it, all felt so distant, so unimportant in the face of what was happening. Jin-Ho wanted to reach out to her, to grab her hand and pull her back to him, but he didn't. He knew better. This was not a moment for promises or desperation. This was the moment for truth. I was so focused on building this empire, this life. I thought it was everything, but I lost myself in it. And I lost you. And Donald. His eyes flicked to her, but he quickly looked away, not sure he could handle seeing the hurt in her eyes again. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for this to happen. I thought I was doing what was best, but I was wrong. I can't undo what I've done. I can't change the past. But I'm here now, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. You can't fix this with words, Jin-Ho. You can't just show up and expect everything to be okay. You abandoned us. You chose everything else over us. And now you expect me to believe that you're sorry? Her voice cracked on the last word, the pain seeping through despite her attempt to keep it together. But even through her anger, there was a hesitation in her gaze, a flicker of something not quite hope, but maybe understanding? I don't expect forgiveness. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I'm not asking you to do this for me. I'm asking you to let me prove that I can be better for Donald. For both of you. Let me rebuild what I destroyed. There was silence again. Shay's face was a mask, but her hands were clenched tight in her lap, her knuckles white. Jin-Ho wanted to reach for her hand, but he didn't. He couldn't. She wasn't ready for that. And maybe, in that moment, neither was he. Prove it. You can't fix what's been broken with words alone, but you can try with your actions. And if you're really serious about making things right, you can start by earning Donald's trust. You've lost him, Jin-Ho. He won't just forgive you because you say sorry. He needs to see that you're willing to fight for him. Fight for us. I'll do whatever it takes. There was a long pause, the weight of her decision hanging in the air. Finally, Shay nodded, though her eyes remained distant. She wasn't ready to trust him again. Not yet. But she was giving him a chance, a small one, but a chance nonetheless. Shay. Start with him, Jin-Ho. Start with Donald, and we'll see. Jin-Ho nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He had a long road ahead of him, but this was the first step. The crack in Shay's defenses, though small, was a glimmer of hope. And for the first time in a long time, Jin-Ho felt like he had a purpose again. The school was small, quiet, nothing like the grand buildings of Indianapolis Jin-Ho was used to. There was no lavish decor, no intricate designs. The walls were lined with simple posters, the classrooms filled with the sound of children's voices. It was a world away from the empire he had built, but it felt like the first step toward something real, something grounded. Jin-Ho stood in front of the school, his hands resting nervously in his pockets. This wasn't a meeting he had ever imagined attending, especially not under these circumstances. His mind had always been consumed by power, by business, but now it was consumed with Donald. He had asked to meet with the teacher, but what he was really hoping for, what he really needed, was a chance to talk to Donald, to start the long, painful journey of rebuilding their broken relationship. When he walked into the room, he saw his son sitting at the back, head bent over a notebook, the distance between them palpable even from across the room. Donald didn't look up when Jin-Ho entered, his face a mask of indifference. Jin-Ho tried to breathe, tried to steady the nerves that had tightened in his chest. He wasn't used to feeling small. He had spent so long commanding respect, demanding attention. But now it was different. Now, he was at the mercy of the one person who mattered most. The teacher, a kind, middle-aged woman, looked up and smiled as she motioned for Jin-Ho to sit. Mr. Kim, thank you for coming. We're happy to have you here. Thank you for your time. He sat down, his eyes briefly flicking to Donald, who remained focused on his work. The teacher spoke for a few minutes, but Jin-Ho's attention was elsewhere, pulled by the quiet pain of being so close to his son, but feeling so far away. Finally, the teacher stood up, leaving them alone in the room. Jin-Ho could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on him. Donald, I know I haven't been there for you. I know I messed up. I was so focused on everything else, on building something that didn't even matter. But I'll be here now. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you. I'll keep showing up. I just hope you'll let me in. The words felt raw, honest. He didn't know if Donald would accept them, if his son would even want him back in his life. But Jin-Ho had to try. He had to show Donald that he wasn't the same man anymore, that he was willing to fight for the family he had abandoned. Donald didn't respond at first, his eyes fixed on the desk in front of him. Jin-Ho watched him, waiting, unsure if his son would even look up. But then, After what felt like an eternity, Donald lifted his head. His eyes were distant, guarded, but there was something there. A flicker of something that Jin-Ho clung to. Something that told him his son hadn't completely shut him out. You think just showing up will make everything okay? Jin-Ho's heart dropped, but he didn't flinch. He couldn't. This was the consequence of his neglect of the emotional distance he had created. He had no right to expect forgiveness, no right to demand that Donald welcome him back with open arms. No, I don't. But I think it's the first step, and I'll take as many steps as it takes. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'm willing to earn it. I'm willing to fight for you, Donald. I'll keep showing up, no matter how long it takes. There was a long pause, and for a moment, Donald looked as if he were about to speak, but he didn't. Instead, he simply nodded once, a small, almost imperceptible gesture that sent a jolt of hope through Jin-Ho's chest. We'll see. Jin-Ho stood, his legs feeling weak under him. His son hadn't forgiven him, not yet, but there was a crack in the wall Donald had built around his heart. And that crack, no matter how small, was enough for Jin-Ho to hold on to. As they walked out of the room together, Jin-Ho felt a sense of cautious optimism stir within him. The road ahead would be long, filled with moments of doubt and pain. But for the first time, he could see a way forward, and he would keep showing up one step at a time, for Donald, for Shay, for his family. It was a beginning, even if it was only a small one, and that, for now, was enough. The park was quiet, the soft rustling of leaves in the trees the only sound breaking the stillness. Indianapolis seemed a world away from the chaos of Jin-Ho's life, a peaceful refuge where time seemed to slow. He and Shay sat together on a weathered bench beneath a tall oak tree, the late afternoon sunlight casting long shadows across the grass. The tension between them was palpable, but beneath it, there was something else, something small, fragile, but there nonetheless, hope. Jin-Ho glanced at Shay, his heart heavy with both regret and the faintest glimmer of optimism. The last few weeks had been the hardest of his life. He had fought for something he hadn't realized he'd lost until it was too late. He had spent years building an empire, thinking that wealth and power could fill the emptiness inside him. But now, sitting beside Shay, he understood. He wasn't the man he used to be, and he wasn't the man he wanted to be. But he was trying. I don't know if we'll ever go back to the way things were. I don't know if things can ever be the same. But I'll spend my life making sure you both know you're the family I want. I'll do whatever it takes. You don't have to forgive me, but I'll show you that I can be the man you need. The words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. Shay didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked out across the park, the soft smile on her lips a mixture of sadness and something deeper. She had been hurt beyond measure, but Jin-Ho could see something flickering in her eyes, a crack in the walls she had built around her heart. That's all we ever wanted from you, Jin-Ho. To care, to put us first. We were always here, right in front of you. But you couldn't see it. You couldn't see us. The words stung, but Jin-Ho didn't flinch. He deserved a sting. He had been blind to the love right in front of him, lost in a world of his own making. Now, he was paying the price for that blindness, and the price was steep. I can see it now. I see you. I see Donald. I see what I've lost, and I can't undo it. But I will keep showing up. I'll keep trying. I don't care how long it takes. There was a quiet pause between them, the weight of what had happened still hanging between them. It was a fragile moment, a sliver of understanding, but not yet full healing. Shay was still unsure, still guarded, but she had heard him. And that, for now, was enough. I'm not asking you to trust me again. Not yet. But I hope, in time, I can prove to you that I'm worth trusting. I don't know what the future holds, Jin-Ho. I don't know if we'll ever find our way back to what we were, but I know that if you really want this, if you really want us, you'll keep showing up. Every day. Jin-Ho nodded, his eyes distant, but there was a flicker of something inside him, something that had been absent for so long. Hope. Maybe not full redemption, but the first step toward it. He wasn't sure if Shay would ever truly forgive him, or if he would ever fully earn Donald's trust again. But he was ready to fight for them. For his family, because he now understood what he had once taken for granted. The silence between them stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable this time. It was a quiet acceptance, both of them understanding that the road ahead would be difficult, but that it was a road they would walk together, if only one step at a time. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Jin-Ho stood, extending his hand to Shay. She looked at it for a moment before taking it, her fingers warm against his. They walked in silence, side by side, toward the path that led out of the park. Donald was waiting at the gate, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets, his expression guarded but not closed off. The distance between them hadn't disappeared, but Jin-Ho could feel the small shift the first crack in the wall Donald had built between them. It wasn't much, but it was enough for now. As the three of them walked together, the weight of the past still lingered, but there was a quiet sense of possibility in the air. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges and setbacks, but for the first time in a long time, Jin-Ho felt like he was on the right path, one step at a time. And that was all he could do, keep showing up, keep trying, because Shay and Donald were the true treasures he had always had, but only now did he realize their value.